When I later went through my own divorce, I decided that they need better litigators in family law. What I experienced and what I saw, I thought was embarrassing for the legal profession. I saw lots of attorneys not know who their client was. They're being handed files and they're calling people's names in the hallway, and if they've never met their client, they obviously don't even know what they look like.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Robin Zegen, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears her name, the Zegen Law Firm. She is down in Dallas, and she focuses on family law, particularly divorce, etc. Robin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. Why don't we jump over before we get started? We're going to show your website. It's a very easy website to remember if you're down in the Dallas area because it's the Dallas Divorce Attorney, not a, but the definite article, right? So thedallasdivorceattorney.com seems like a really good website. You're welcome to visit her site. You can book a consultation. You can also call 972-653-0448. You can visit her in person as well, and we'll have links to all of her website, her phone number, and everything else down in the description as we always do. So please feel free to dig down and look at that. But Robin runs a full-service law firm focusing on family law, divorce mediation. We're going to be talking today about collaborative divorce as well as high net worth divorce, which is its own unique beast, which is kind of an interesting topic to talk about. So anyway, that is her website right there, thedallasdivorceattorney.com. Our first sponsor for today is SearchSift, which I think I pulled up right here. Quick question. When somebody searches for a lawyer or another business in your market, are you actually winning those clicks or are you just paying to stay in the game? Because Google Ads is an auction. The more firms bidding, the more expensive those clicks get. But before anyone clicks, Google is already suggesting what they should be searching next, and that's where SearchSift comes in. SearchSift helps you position your business or firm inside of those predictive searches. So instead of just competing for attention, you influence the search before the decision is made. And here's the kicker: with SearchSift, you don't actually pay to rank. You only pay when somebody actually clicks and comes to your website. So you're really only paying for traffic, just like with Google Ads, but usually it's less than half the cost. So instead of overpaying for the same leads, you get in front of the decision maker earlier and you look like you're recommended by the search engines. Visit SearchSift, that's SYFT, searchsift.com to see what your market looks like and to book a call with a specialist. Our second sponsor is Groove. One of our longest running sponsors is Groove Pages or Groove Funnels. If you're running an online business, that doesn't mean you should be paying for 12 different tools before you've even made a sale, and that's where Groove comes in. Groove gives entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers one platform for funnels, checkouts, emails, memberships, e-commerce sites, blogs, webinars, affiliates, automation, and more. There's no credit card required, no trial that flips, no monthly software bill that just to get started. Groove is actually free to use, and they only earn a small percentage of the fees when you sell things through their platform, and that's how they pay for the whole thing. It's very, very cool, very, very quick and zippy, very stable. I'm a big fan of them myself. I've built a number of websites on their platform. So stop duct taping your business together and stop paying for expensive subscriptions. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to learn more and sign up today. Again, it is completely free. There is no cost to be involved in Groove, and it replaces everything from Go High Level to ClickFunnels to Kajabi, all of the different things you might be paying $300 to $400 to $500 a month for, all of it completely free. It's a very, very cool system. Again, that is theattorneypost.com/groove. And there we go. All right, let me kill this screen share here and we'll jump back over. All righty. So again, I am joined by Robin Zegen, who is again a Dallas divorce and family law attorney with over 30 years of experience helping clients navigate one of the most personal and difficult transitions of their lives. As somebody who's personally endured a high-conflict divorce after a 20-year marriage, Robin brings both firsthand empathy and determined advocacy to her work. At Zegen Law Firm, she helps clients identify their goals, understand their options, and move through divorce, custody, and family law matters as efficiently and effectively as possible. Whether negotiating a thoughtful settlement or aggressively representing a client in court, Robin focuses on helping families protect their futures, relationships, and their dignity. Now, that's just a little blurb to kind of introduce you, and I'm sure I could have put in so much more, and there's so much I left out. So my first question, Robin, to you is simply this. What did I miss? Who are you? Let people know who you are and what makes you tick.
Well, so I am remarried. You mentioned that I've been through a divorce, but I am remarried and been married to my husband now for 12 years. We live in a suburb of Dallas, Texas, and we are empty nesters at this point. I have three young adult sons, and all of them are now independent, at least for the time being. We thought we had them all independent when COVID hit, and then we got to have several of them cycle back through, but we are now empty nesters, and so we have replaced them with two giant Saint Bernards. So yes, and they go everywhere with us. So I usually have a little dog fur on me somewhere. So,
Are they
but
as slobbery as they appear?
yes, they are. Yes, they are. So we repaint the bottom half of our house every few weeks. We have to go through and touch it up. But they are slobbery, but they just could not be softer and sweeter animals. I had never had a big dog before, but my husband talked me into it when we went out to a rescue for St. Bernards, and we ended up coming home with our first one. So that's where we got her. And then we got the second one as a puppy. And believe it or not, he's still a puppy, even though he's a little over 120 pounds. So they are big. Their heads are bigger than my head. So it took a little getting used to, but they just are the sweetest animals. So I was totally sold on them. But that's how we spend our time is with them. Yeah, so we have like the furriest animals in one of the hottest climates, but
I didn't even think about that. I have to like shave the dog or something in the
yeah,
heat
you
of
have
the
to walk
summer.
them really early in the morning or really late at night, unless we're in those few months of the year when it's mild here.
Yeah.
But yeah, this time of year it's definitely too hot for them. So yeah, that we've got actually ice beds for them so they can
Huh.
cool off after they've been outside. So they
Yeah,
have those,
those
and they
those are the dogs you always see in the comics or whatever. They're up in the mountains. They've got the little barrel under their chest. Like
that's
they're really
right.
like snow dogs, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. In fact, when we just recently had the ice storm, and I mean, it was slick. It was so slick that my husband stepped out to try to get something and slid all the way to the fence. So, out there with a broom handle, pulling him back up, because it was just such thick ice, and they were running and playing on it and not sliding a bit. Their feet just spread out and give them the
It's
traction
just
they need, and
what they're designed for.
they didn't want to come in. They were like, no, we're staying out here. That's great.
We have
So
one
yeah,
dog and he's a big puppy. He's like 3 years old and 100 and something pounds as well. He's part German Shepherd and part we don't know what American Mutt. Probably I think there's some Labrador and maybe some actually is it Mastiff in there or Great
might
Dane.
be.
He's got the
Yeah.
profile for it, but he's a big boy. But man, when the snow hits, he doesn't want to come inside. He hates being outside most of the time. He hates being outside during the summer, during the winter, during the spring. But if there's snow on the ground, he won't come in, which is just funny. So there you go. Dogs are
Yeah.
dogs.
We even keep our house cooler. So there's lots of times that I have on jackets in the
Oh,
house because they just get so hot. But I mean, their fur is so thick.
yeah.
It reminds you of UGG, that just totally woolly underneath. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I always say they're UGG soft, but they are absolutely wonderful, and I love having them. They're actually even with all the slobber, they're less trouble than raising three boys, so they're less damage to the house. I'll tell you that.
Fair enough. No, I can attest to that as well. We have 5 kids, and two of our three oldest are boys, and I one of them has literally broken 6 windows in this
Yep.
house and his back. So yeah, he was fine, but trampoline issue. So stay
Yeah.
off the trampoline, kids. Stay off the trampolines.
Yeah. I
Every
mean,
every
you go to
trampoline
the
comes with a
emergency
warning on it
room
about
and
yeah,
yeah.
they come with a warning about death and permanent disability. Like take that seriously. So anyway, well, Robin, obviously I'm talking with Robin Zegen of the eponymous law firm that bears her name, and she is an advocate of dogs, but she's also an advocate of persons. She works in a law firm. She focuses on family law. But Robin, if I didn't know anything about you, if you and I had 30 seconds or a minute in an elevator, and you could give me your pitch, tell me about your firm. Who do you really help? Where are they located? Why do they come to you?
Yeah, so yeah, I think most people come to me because one, I answer my phones. So when you hire me, there's no gatekeeper. You don't have to leave messages and hope to get a return. I answer my calls. I return my messages every day, and I keep my caseload at a level where I can be that one-on-one availability for my clients, and I think they appreciate that. I like it because it helps me to be able to really, really focus on their cases from the very start all the way to the end. And I think that's important. I've worked my way up to be at that level to where I can give it that kind of time, and I really enjoy being able to work my cases that way. Additionally, I'm additionally trained in collaborative law, which, although it's been around for a little over 2 years in Texas, is still relatively new. I would say probably less than 5% of attorneys are trained in collaborative law. And it is an out-of-court procedure to help the spouses be able to solve their own issues. And we have a team that works with them to help them do so amicably and get through the process in half the time and half the expense. It's just amazingly better for especially families. I don't believe that families belong in courtrooms. Most people, when they come to see me, have never been in a courtroom, and I think it's wrong to put them there at a really vulnerable part of their life when so many things are changing. So I do think that collaborative is a much better procedure for families. And I would say 95% of cases are good candidates for it.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. So let me ask you this. What got you into law? Did you grow up on, I don't know, Perry Mason? Or did you stumble into law as like an alternative to something else? And then what got you into family law in particular?
Well, so actually, I was a finance major. I had no intentions of doing law whatsoever. I wanted to be on the stock floor. I wanted to be trading. I was so looking forward to all of that. And the stock market crashed as I was graduating. So there were no jobs. So, having some student loans, I was kidding with some neighbors of mine and said, I need to find a way to stay in school and keep these student loans in deferment. And that's when they suggested, why don't you go to law school? And I was like, nah, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be good at that. And they said, no, I think you would be. You ought to go do it. Well, you have to take an LSAT test to get into law school. So our neighbor basically dared me to take the test. I thought, what do I get to lose? Right? It's one day. I'll go take the test. I took it and I got scholarships. And I thought, well, who knows? Maybe I would be good at this. And then everybody was kind of pointing out to me, well, you can still do things in finance. You can still do lots of things in finance with it. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll be a securities and exchange lawyer. And so I'll still be attached to what I wanted to do. But as I went through law school, and I absolutely loved law school. I mean, I would have stayed there if it had paid money instead of costing money. So I absolutely loved it. I kept saying, these are my people. I love this. I love the debate. I love trying to figure out what somebody else is going to say first. And I really, really enjoyed it. So, but as I went through, I took one class on family law because it's one of the subjects on the bar. You have to pass that part, pass the bar exam. So I begrudgingly took the class, and I was really intrigued. I thought it was really interesting. It was a lot of things I didn't know about family law, and I thought it was a really interesting aspect. After I passed the bar, though, my first job was in a civil rights law firm. So we did a lot of representing the police officers when they're involved in shootings and they get sued, or false arrest or things along those lines. And so, I did a lot of that. That's all in federal court, and I enjoyed it. But we had one partner in the firm that did family law, and the conversations I heard him saying on the phone and so forth were far more interesting. And so I found those to be really interesting conversations and an interesting aspect of law, and it piqued my interest. So when I later went through my own divorce, I decided that they need better litigators in family law. What I experienced and what I saw, I thought was embarrassing for the legal profession. I saw lots of attorneys not know who their client was. They're being handed files and they're calling people's names in the hallway, and they've never met their client. They obviously don't even know what they look like. They weren't prepared for their cases. And I just felt like it was very degrading, and I felt like they weren't taking it as serious as their clients were. I mean, very few things change almost everything about your life, but divorce does. It can change where you work, where you live. It can change your family. It can change a lot of things. And I just felt like they weren't taking it serious. And I don't mean every single one of them. Obviously, there's some good attorneys out there, but I saw a lot that weren't. And I just thought, I could come over here into family law and make a difference. Yeah. And I've started with family law, and I've just not looked back.
Never left.
No, I haven't. I just thoroughly enjoy it.
What was the first moment when you were practicing law when you're like, you know what, this is the kind of law I'm meant to practice?
I think really with my first client, because I understood what they were saying. I totally knew what they were talking about when they're afraid of something and when they're stressed and they're trying to keep life stable for their children. And, it's a lot to go through. And I just think that when you're helping them and they say at the end of the conversation, thanks, I feel better, maybe I'll sleep tonight, you feel like you've really done something worthwhile. And so, yeah, I think from the very, very start, I was very sold on it. And I've not practiced anything else since.
That's awesome. I was actually looking earlier. I'm going to jump over here really quickly. I was looking at your Google profile. You have a perfect 5-star rating with over 26 reviews, which is great. I mean, it's hard to get reviews from clients all the time, especially public ones. But I was just reading some of them. Robin was amazing. I came to her for legal advice about a co-parenting issue, and rather than take an aggressive and expensive approach, she provided different legal options that were more favorable and calculated. Just across the board, people are saying just how great you are and how they loved working with you. So clearly, you found a good niche, and you know what you're doing, and people have really spoken out about you. So I always like to share whenever I'm talking with someone and I know they've got lots of great glowing reviews. So I encourage people to go check out, Google the Zegen Law Firm. You can find her online, but she's got some great reviews on there, which is awesome. So
I'm always so flattered when I see what they have to say, because some of them are so quiet.
Yeah.
So whenever you get to see at the end what an impression you made on them, it feels good. I always love whenever I get those.
Yeah. So about 5-6 years ago, the whole country ground to a halt. We all went through a weird pandemic, and I've talked to attorneys all over the country, in New York and Florida and California and all stops in between. And it's been fascinating in different industries, including not just family law, but like personal injury was a funny one, because a lot of places, they're like, actually calls are really down because nobody's getting hurt because everyone's staying home, right? But obviously a lot of people stayed in their house. And I think at least in some places that push people to the edge. So I'm kind of curious. I always like to ask, particularly family law practitioners, what was your experience of the pandemic and the fallout of all of that?
Yeah. So, it was about mid-March that we all got sent home. And
basically my wife's birthday. It was happy birthday, honey.
What was it? March what? What day?
Hers is 12th. So it was right around then, give or take.
Around the 12th. Yeah. I thought it was right around mid-March. Yeah. So we all get sent home, and we had a full caseload. We had things going on. I was actually set for trial the next week. And so, I'm trying to figure out, because the courts went home too. And I'm trying to figure out, well, are we going to trial? My client obviously wants to know. And I'm trying to figure out what do I need to do here? And so I was really scrambling and really, really busy. I did the very first online trial for Collin County, and we did it on time. We stayed on time for our trial that week. And so, it was a lot of trial and error, learning how to work Zoom thoroughly and all of those things. But everybody was really gracious to each other and worked well with each other, and we got through it. And so then, we still had hearings and things going on, and everything was kind of taking twice as long because everything had been prepared to be in person. So everything that we had photocopied and put in binders and marked with exhibits now needed to be scanned so that we could put it online. And so really, really busy. Then come around, say, middle of April, you start thinking, okay, well, I wonder if we're going to get any more calls, because the phones have not been ringing, And so you start worrying. And I started telling my husband, I go, this may be the end of me. I mean, I may not be able to continue with this if we can't get things, going, if we're not meeting with clients and so forth. But come May, our phones started ringing, and they did not stop for, I don't know, 3 years. I mean, it was just a flood. And now that we've had some time to kind of reflect back on that period, I think what happened is a lot of marriages that were destined for divorce, but just hadn't quite pulled the trigger yet, were pushed over the edge. Because they had to do a lot of really uncomfortable things, and everybody was under a lot of stress. So, we had not been a society where everybody stayed home, and that, I think, was really, really tough if it was already a strained situation to begin with. And so we started getting a flood of divorces, of child custody issues, people not exchanging kids because they were afraid of COVID, and, all kinds of things that were going on. So we had a lot of emergency orders coming down from the Supreme Court, and lots of hearings going on. Lots of protective orders, unfortunately. We did have a lot of more violent situations. Again, I think pressing people to the limits, the fact that they couldn't leave the house when they got in an argument, things like that. So we did have more violent situations as well. But I think everybody adapted well, at least around my area. I practice in 4 counties, Collin County and Rockwall County, Dallas County, and Denton County. Everybody kind of did it differently. So you had to know your county, but all of the systems seemed to work, and we got through it. We really still do a lot of things. It changed the profession. So we still have a lot of things by Zoom. We figured out ways to be more efficient, which saves clients money. We've eliminated some things that didn't need hearings, but just traditionally had always had hearings. We don't do the very final hearing anymore for prove up. To prove up your divorce, we don't do it in person anymore. None of those are done in person. We came up with an affidavit. So big time saver for people. And as a result, if you save your attorney's time, you save money. So it's really, really nice, some of the things that we got in there and made the system more efficient. So there's some positives that come out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and we saw a little bit of a slowdown after we saw that big burst, but personally, I mean, it was a really, really busy time frame.
Did it make people, did it make people more likely to want to resolve things outside of the court since there was such a lag and a delay, or did that really not come into place? No,
not really. I think just they were all under so much strain. I want to say it was a lot more fighting, a lot more just really heightened emotions, and really heightened emotions don't think logically. And so, most of the time, half the battle is getting both of the parties to a point where they feel safe and secure and can bring those emotion levels down so that we can try to reach settlements. Because if you have a good attorney on both sides, you shouldn't need the court. I mean, we know pretty close to what the court's going to do. So it's a lot of it is what I want to say is kind of client management in a sense of helping them understand realistically what's going to happen and what it's going to cost to find out if you can get it this much different. Yeah. And so, it's a lot of times we can work through it, and we can do it far more creative than the court can. The court doesn't have time to be creative about it. So, the attorneys can be a lot more creative and do something that works really, really well for that unique family. And I think those where you get your best results.
That's interesting. We'll probably circle around to that here in a little bit. So I like that concept a lot. So let me ask you this, though. This is the closest thing I ask to a gotcha question on this interview. I warned you, don't worry. For my listeners, she's not sprung out of nowhere, but I'm a firm believer that you step up to bat enough times, nobody bats 1,000, right? Everybody experiences a failure or a loss or a setback. Can you let my listeners, Robin, know about a time in your practice when you failed, or you had a severe setback you weren't expecting, but what did you learn from it, and how do you carry that forward to always make sure that you're giving the best care to your clients?
Yeah, so I would have to say that for me, I think it was just more of a I guess not knowing. I want to say it's maybe just not being quite seasoned at the time, of not knowing to what lengths people will go when they're upset. and so, so I had a person take their clothes off in court. So, didn't see that one coming.
Like stripped down completely?
Yes.
Can I ask, was there a purpose behind it, or did they just kind of snap? Was it
I think they just kind of snapped. So, okay. And I've seen some stuff like that since, just not to that level. So,
All right. Well, that ties into a similar question I was about to ask you, and maybe that one actually is your answer, but I'll ask it anyway. What's the most absurd thing you've encountered? I talked to an attorney once in family law, and they said that the divorce, the whole thing was getting hung up, and they were spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And the thing they were hung up over was, I'm trying to remember what it was now. It was like some teaspoons or something really just silly like that.
The teacup case is the most famous, and they were literally, I think, over $1 million in legal fees over a teacup that they were fighting over. For me personally, when we have things like that come up, I tell my clients, what if, you're spending this on me? What if instead you just went and bought the new teacup and they had the old teacup?
Yeah. One of the other ones was it was like a box set of the Lord of the Rings or something. And it's like, just go buy a new one. Like, yeah, it's a good movie, but
yeah,
just go buy a new one.
I think one of my favorite ones was it wasn't my case. I was sitting waiting to do my hearing, and there was a couple that were representing themselves at the bench, and they were fighting over the mattress for the bed. They had pretty much divided up everything else, but they were fighting over this mattress. And finally, the judge said, so, like, how old is the mattress? And one of them said, we've had it our whole marriage. It's 18 years old. And she was like, okay, nobody's getting the mattress. Everybody's going to buy a new mattress. She was like, I cannot believe we're fighting over that.
But when you find the mattress that's just perfectly comfortable. That's
we
funny.
Also have, and he's getting ready to retire. He was going to retire at the end of December, but I last heard he's extended it for just to wrap up a trial that he's got coming in a pretty high profile case. But he's well known as a judge for having this big coin, and it has, one party on one side, one party on the other side, and he flips it and winner takes all on property. He will not have a property dispute in his courtroom. He just asks if there is one. If there is, he gives you a few minutes to talk amongst yourself and see if you can't solve it. If you can't solve it, he says, bailiff, bring me my coin. And he
Wow.
says, I'm going to flip this and winner's going to take all. So you can decide whether y'all want to come up with something. And most of the time, people take that hint and figure it out between them. But every now and then, you get the excitement of getting to see who takes all. And,
That's
you know,
fascinating.
I'm always kind of struggle with this because sometimes all people have is their belongings. You know, we may be sitting here saying, oh, it's an 18-year-old mattress, but it may mean something to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I kind of struggle with, I get it. You don't want to spend a lot of the taxpayers' money on the court system divvying up used stuff. You know, is it the most efficient use of our tax dollars? Probably not. But by the same token, it's like, you know, have a little compassion
Yeah.
for the people and their stuff. You know,
Well, and it's
especially
a
when
very
you feel like
vulnerable
so
time,
much
and
is
yeah,
changing. You
yeah,
know, it's really hard sometimes to let go.
almost like psychologically anchored to certain things, maybe unreasonably, but nevertheless, like that's my anchor, that 18-year-old mattress or that Lord of the Rings box set or whatever it happens to be. We can understand that, I guess. So the flip side of absurdities and failures, of course, is success. Obviously, you know, keeping your client's privacy in mind. What's one of the moments, or one or two of the moments, Robin, that you're most proud of in your practice? The things that when you go to sleep at night, you lay down your pillow, you kind of think back over your day or your career, and the things just like you're like, oh, I'm so glad that worked out that way, or I'm just so excited that this happened, or I'm so surprised when things resolved the way I was not expecting them to resolve.
Yeah. So I've got two of them that I think were kind of the biggest highlights to me. So I represented a father who had never seen his youngest child. He was not married to the mother, and she had kept that youngest one from him. Now he had a pretty good relationship with his older daughter, but his son, he had never seen. His son was, I want to say he was about 2 or 3 years old at the time of the trial. And we'd been in litigation for like a year and a half getting to trial. But in that case, when I got him full custody of both of the children, and the judge ordered that child brought to the courtroom, and he got his kid for the first time, got to see him for the first time. That was a pretty moving verdict there. That was an enjoyable one to see. And that happened to be the first trial that my husband got to go and watch me do. And I mean, to this day, he still talks about that one. Another one I had was a case where I represented the mother, and the father was extremely controlling. I don't think he was necessarily trying to be controlling of the children, but it was the best way to get to the mother. And he just would not stop. And so he would give the biggest, I think, factor in this, although I certainly, you don't get to ask the judge what made you decide this, but I'm pretty sure this is what it was, is that the older daughter was in high school. And I mean, she was in like her junior year of high school, maybe her senior year. And she was getting ready to go. She'd taken French like for 3 years. And so she was getting ready to go to France with the school trip. Her mother was a teacher and was going to chaperone the trip. And that, of course, set dad off. And so dad had the passports. He wasn't going to give it to mom so that she could take the daughter, unless mom did a bunch of things that he wanted her to do, things that she was not the least bit required to do. And they were not married. So it was like a whole string of things he wanted done. And he gave like a countdown. He was like, you have, 2 hours to do this. And then it was like, you have an hour and 10 minutes. And then you have an hour and 5 minutes. And he sent a text, and then it got down to like 15 seconds, 10 seconds. I mean, and I read those just right at the very beginning. And you could see the judge's face when she saw just the nature of how controlling he was being. And he was willing for his daughter to not get to go on this trip in order to try to have that control over mom. There were a number of other things he did too that were really odd, like he put cameras in the daughter's bedrooms when they slept at night, which was just odd. When they had friends over, it was really strange. And they were both teenage girls, and we had therapists on and so forth on there. And the judge did interview the children in chambers. And in that case, she ordered that the children didn't have to see him ever again. And that was a pretty moving case. The oldest daughter, whenever she turned 18, let me know how big a help that was for her.
Oh, wow.
To not have to be around him anymore. So it was really a nice, rewarding case. And really very, very nice people.
Yeah, that's a shame, but that's a good story to be sure.
You go through things like that. I mean, I've represented a guy who I'm pretty certain, I didn't stick around for his trial in criminal, but I'm pretty certain he violently raped a woman. And, it's just, there's all kinds out there, and so you get to see everything. But, all these people that do all these different things have children. And so there's custody disputes that go on between them.
Yeah.
And, I think that's the thing is people need to understand is a win means something different in different cases, depending on your facts. So a win for him was to get to have any contact with his child, so that was a big win for him, was getting to have some supervised time with his kid, because he was probably getting ready to go to prison.
Yeah.
So, so it's just, for some people it's to get 50-50 custody. For some people it's to get any custody. So it's different for everybody, but
the target will always shift. Have you ever had a client similar to that come in where you're just like, I'm sorry, I can't represent you?
I've had a few cases where I've gotten out of the case because they wouldn't let me help them. I mean, I'm if I can't help you, then you're wasting your money. It's just you can do all of those antics on your own for free. And so, whenever I've got somebody who clearly does not want my help, they're making a mockery of the system and everybody involved, then to me, my time's better spent somewhere else.
That's fair. So let me ask you, this is a really, really, really important question. I need you to take this very seriously. And then we'll shift into the topics at hand. But who's your favorite attorney in pop culture, TV, movies, etc.?
Oh, I loved watching LA Law when I was in law school. I just totally fell in love with Mackenzie Brackman law firm, and each one of them kind of played a different aspect of an attorney. But, I thought that was, and for me as a female, that was really a powerful show, because at that time in the legal industry, it was predominantly men. And to see these powerful women on LA Law and, watch them take on powerful cases and so forth was just really encouraging and really empowering. Because whenever I first started, whenever I went to anything, a courtroom, whatever, I was probably the only female there. There just weren't a lot of females. Now, if you go into a courtroom, at least around here where I practice, you're going to be lucky to find a male. Most of the judges are female. Lots of the bailiffs are female. Your court reporters are all female that I can think of right now. I can't think of a single one we have right now that's not. So most of the attorneys in family law are female. So I often represent men, and I'm thinking you're probably sitting there feeling a lot like I felt originally, where you're like, I'm the only female in the room, and he's saying I'm the only man here. Yeah,
there was
so
a famous there was a riddle, and I'm trying to remember the exact setup of it. Basically, the riddle goes something like a man is walking by in a building, and he hears someone yell out, "Harold, no!" And then somebody crashes through a window and falls and dies. He runs up the stairs, and the setup is he sees a lawyer, a priest, and a policeman, and or maybe it's a policeman walking by too, and he immediately arrests the so what is it? The no. Oh, I'm biffing it. He says it's like Sarah, don't do that or whatever. It calls it a woman's name, and he goes up and he sees a priest, a policeman, and a lawyer, and immediately arrests the lawyer. And they're like, "Well, how did they know that?" And the punchline of it basically is, I'm totally butchering it because I'm thinking of it on the spot here, was we commonly think of, we stereotype these industries as being one thing. Now, a priest by definition means a man. That you'd be a priest or a priestess, or you could be a pastor, I guess. Usually we think, when you think of priest, that's defining what it is. And policeman, because it specifies policeman, we think of that as well, but that would mean man versus like a policewoman. But because a lawyer we think of as a man, most people like, how, I don't know, how do they solve that? Like, well, because a lawyer could be a man. We don't have, not lawyer and lawyer, we don't have a
right.
gendered version of that one like we do policeman, policewoman, or whatever. So it's fascinating that you say that, because honestly, I guess that kind of surprises me. What's really funny is, so another side story really quickly, but I teach class in the evenings at my church, and I had a gal come through, wanted to join the church, and we teach these classes, and she really wants to be a lawyer. And so she's like, I love it. I had such a passion. She's got such an analytical mind. So like I've known a handful of people that have gone through law school, but she's probably like the most voracious reader, the most like targeted. I have got questions. She would keep me after class for an hour and a half and just keep asking questions and whatnot. So like my opinion on women as lawyers is, my goodness, I have no doubt that you can do it equally as well. But it's fascinating to see that your experience of that was that at one point it was more male dominated, but that fits with the riddle. Anyway, I'm trying to put that together because I never really thought about that as an actual perception, but I mean, you lived it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was I went to law school. I started in 1990, and it would just there, especially I started up in Oklahoma. I'm originally from Oklahoma, and there just really, it was a male dominated industry. I didn't, my parents never raised me to think that I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. I mean, they were always like, you can do anything.
Mhm.
And so I didn't really think a lot about it until you're in that situation. And, I'm small, I'm short, I'm a small person and female. And you start looking around, you're thinking, I look like a little kid in here, with all these men, and I mean, at the time they had this thing where it was just a tradition in Oklahoma where they would bet their tie. Well, I don't wear a tie. It's just like, things just didn't quite fit. But it's been fun to see that turnover. So I think, one of the things whenever I get a female in my office and they're like, I can't, I say, you've got to be kidding me. Never before in history have women been able to do so much. Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
absolutely can. I mean, it's amazing how much the world has changed in
Yeah.
all industries, but yeah, I mean, it's a totally different world now. And like I said, in a lot of instances, at least in family law, it's kind of reversed.
Huh. That
Gone
is
the other
fascinating.
direction.
But that actually that comports with what I would expect, I guess. So it makes sense. So let me ask you this. Now, obviously, Robin, divorce is hard. When you add a business, when you add retirement accounts, when you add real estate or tax consequences, obviously when you add children, privacy concerns, years of your shared financial life, it becomes a lot more complicated. It's not just who gets what. So I guess let me start there and ask, what do people misunderstand about particularly things like high net worth divorce when there's a lot of assets in play, or one or two of them started a business? What are the biggest misinterpretations, misunderstandings people bring into your office in those situations?
Yeah, so a number of them. A lot of times when we're dealing with some high net worth divorces, a lot of times we have one high net worth earner and the other person not so much.
Mhm.
And getting that other person to understand that the law doesn't give them some big windfall. That I think so often we see people think that think in terms of my money or your money. I bought that car. I, you know, earned this money. If that's my retirement. And I constantly say, no, under the law, it's our retirement. It's our business. It's our car. It's our house. It's our children. That's how the law sees it. The law sees you as though you two had decided to strike up a partnership. And at the end of the day, when we divide that partnership, we're not asking who worked harder.
Yeah.
We're simply dividing that partnership. And that's what happens. And, you know, there are some things that can vary it slightly, but generally speaking, y'all are 50-50 owners, and we're going to come up with something pretty similar to that at the end of the day. You have to have really unusual facts for it to be different than that. So, you know, if we get into a situation where somebody's been hiding money or, you know, mismanaging things on purpose to deprive the other person of part of the assets, things like that, then courts can get into punishment phases. And those might end up with disproportionate divisions. But for the most part, we're going to be dividing things. By the same token, it's going to end. You are not going to get alimony in Texas. No such thing. We don't have it in Texas.
Really?
We are a get a job state. So that is, and that one hits a lot of people really hard. You can imagine if you've been a homemaker for 35 years and you're now right at retirement age, and we tell you, hey, you're on your own. That's a tough pill to swallow. Yeah. So the only thing we have in Texas is spousal support, and it is not much. You know, it really is meant to transition you to being on your own. So they really don't. I get people who come in and think, hey, my husband earns X, I'm going to get all this money and I'm still not going to work and I'm still going to stay home with the kids and my life isn't going to change. Your life's going to change. It's definitely going to change. And then the other thing I see a lot of is this younger generation. You know, my kids being part of that generation, I'm watching them, and they very much, because they are all going to be two income households. You know, we've transitioned over the years, and we're really at the stage where it takes two incomes to raise a family. And you're going to see everybody's two income household at this next generation as they're coming through. And so they operate a little differently with their finances, but our laws haven't changed. Our laws still say everything goes in one pot and gets split. Well, you know, I'm getting divorces where they don't have any idea what their spouse makes for a living. They don't have any idea what's in their bank account, their retirement account, or anything else, because they've operated completely separate. You pay your car payment, I pay my car payment. You pay half the house payment, I pay half the house payment, you know, and they just split everything up like roommates, essentially. And my big speech for that is you can do it however you want, but you better have a prenup, because that's the only way you get to choose what law applies to you. Because in a prenup, you get to decide what law, how you want it to be. If you want it to all go to one person, you can say that in a prenup. As long as you both agree at the outset, that's what they'll apply to your case. If you want to operate separately like that, you need to say it in a prenup, because otherwise you're going to be really surprised when you go to court and you find out that you're going to have to turn over all those bank statements, all those retirement statements, and everything's going in one pot and getting divided. That I think is going to be a real shocker. So, you know, you can either go the hard way about it and try to change all the law for everybody, which might happen eventually. The law is usually reactive, so it'll take a while to get that kind of a change to happen. Or you can go get a prenup for about $2,000, and it's money well spent. That's about 4 hours of an attorney's time. So, you know, you're not even getting beyond filing your case for that amount of money. So it's money well saved, because then you get to decide exactly how your case is going to operate. So there won't be a need for a trial. There won't be a need for discovery. There won't be a need for all these different things that cost money. So that best thing that they can do is go get a prenup and decide it ahead of time.
Gotcha. I would imagine some people would push back on that. So I'm kind of curious what advice you would give on this. I'm gonna play, I don't know, devil's advocate or whatever here. Getting a prenup is it feels very unloving. It feels like you're going into the marriage saying, well, I think this is gonna fail. And I imagine a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to, $2,000 is $2,000. I mean, it's not gonna make or break your day, probably, but that's a lot of money, especially for most people. So it's like we're in this for the long haul. We're not going to get married. Why would we ever want a prenup? What advice would you give to those people, if I can ask that?
Yeah. So one of your mid-sized weddings right now, what do you think that costs? Yeah.
I got married 21, 22 years ago. We were very, very, very frugal in what we did, and it was probably still at least 10 grand when all was said and done.
Right.
We
So,
did have a dinner.
you're usually talking closer to 50 grand
Yeah.
for a wedding. So, what's 2 grand to decide how everything's going to be? And keep in mind, prenups not only work whenever your marriage doesn't work, they also work when your marriage is successful and when you live until one of you dies, because they also operate at the time of death.
Mhm.
So you're going to use your prenup. It's going to happen. So
Does that keep people out of probate, or how does that work at the time
it
of death? I'm
doesn't
curious.
keep
I've
it.
never heard someone
Nothing,
state that before.
yeah,
So tell me,
nothing
elaborate
except
on
the
that.
trust can keep it out of probate.
That's kind of what I
But
wondered, but
yeah, but it does help because now we know what the rules are, because
mhm.
your rules are going to apply, the rules you decided. And my thing on this is, if y'all are going to, I mean, you're going to have a conversation about how you want to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And if your idea of how we're going to pay the bills is that each of you are going to split it up, then you need to go ahead and put that in your prenup so that you're not surprised later on when somebody else's rules are applied to your case. You lived it all one way, and then we come in and we apply a completely different set of rules that you haven't been living by. It
Gotcha.
doesn't make sense. And keep in mind, our rules were set years and years and years ago, where we had a lot of stay-at-home moms.
Yeah. That was
So
the
they were
norm
set
for,
up so that that person who stayed at home didn't just have no assets,
yeah.
right? So that they were set up for a different time frame. And eventually these laws will probably change, but it takes a long time to change laws. And you can change them immediately for your case with a prenup. And so it makes sense to do it. Another situation we see that really benefits from prenuptial agreements that's not having to do with this, oh, I'm just trying to protect my stuff, is whenever we have people who get married later in life and they have children from a different marriage. So you don't want to end up in a situation like, let's just say worst case scenario, you're on your honeymoon and an accident happens and you both die, but one of you outlives the other one by a few minutes.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want all the things you thought were going to go to your kids going to their kids. Your kids getting nothing, right? So there's lots of reasons for prenups to protect things like that, where I would say both of you have a very strong interest in wanting to have things divided so that certain things go to your children.
Gotcha.
And pass on some of your wealth to your kids instead of just one side winning.
Yeah.
By application of the law and not what you all would have done at all.
Yeah.
So I just think that is important to think of, not just divorce. It's, I guess, planning, just like you would plan by creating wills and so forth, right?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. I never thought of it in that aspect before, but no, it makes sense. I get that. So I want to talk to you a little bit. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour already. I don't want to take up all of your Friday. But one of the things you focus on a lot is collaborative divorce. And a lot of people don't even know what that is. Maybe it sounds kind of weird, kind of soft. You said only about 5% of attorneys are even like really trained to do collaborative divorce. So for people who've never heard of it before or don't know what it is, what is a collaborative divorce? Why would I even want a collaborative divorce? What makes it better than a traditional divorce, and are there any drawbacks to it?
Yeah, so we've got so when you have your standard litigation system, the attorneys in that system argue against each other, and we argue for what your client wants, right? They can unrealistically want it. they can want it for whatever reason they want to want it. Nobody cares what reason they want something, right? And so we go in and we argue the case that way, and we argue it against each other. In a collaborative case, we ask the why. What do you want it for? What's the interest behind the ask? So, to give an example that I have on my website, we can have both of them fighting over wanting the house. Obviously, at the end of the day, only one of them is going to get the house. If either of them, you go to court, the court generally doesn't worry about the house. They generally sell it because it's the easiest thing for a court to do. But if we're going to try to settle this issue with the house, we start asking why they want the house. And we may find out that the husband wants the house because his home office is there and everything's set up just like he needs it. And it's in the right location and so forth for his home office. And he doesn't want to have disruption to his business by moving and restarting all of that. And the wife may want it because she wants to keep the children in their schools and the neighborhood friends that they've had, growing up with and all of those things. And sometimes when we get that why out there, then the husband says, well, you know what? I want all those things for the kids too. And then they realize, okay, then maybe it does make more sense to let you have the house and I would go and look for another one. But could you do a couple of things maybe that make it easier for me to move? And so we look at those things. So it's helping them get through a system of figuring out a better alternative than just splitting things up and cutting things in half and selling off stuff.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about it is it's a team approach. The attorneys work together.
Yeah.
So they don't work against each other, which is why we have to be retrained. You can't go in there with that same mindset, right? You got to switch to an interest-based system. And so we also have a mental health professional that runs the meetings. This person's going to, before we ever start the meetings, they're going to meet with the couple individually, each person. They're going to meet with them and they're going to find out like what their talking style is, what their negotiating styles are, what things maybe are that they're sensitive to, and how they view the other person. And so they're going to get this kind of information. And then when we have these, and they're going to teach them also in those meetings, how to stay amicable and forward-looking. We're not looking backwards. We're not looking at who did what, which is what litigation's all about, is everything that already happened, right? Whenever we go into collaborative, we're looking forward. How can we make this work going forward? And so we look at all the different strengths, the weaknesses, and things like that. But we also look to make sure that both of them are getting, that everybody's respecting each other, that everybody's getting heard, that they're getting equal talking time. If we see somebody start crossing their arms and things like that, then we know they're uncomfortable and we need to kind of help them out and getting them comfortable. And so we work on that and we go at whatever pace is needed. So, we're not under somebody else's schedule. We're there for that time period and we work on them. And we have a financial professional that collects all the stuff. So they collect all the financial documents and they put together the whole financial spreadsheet. They can look into claims of, I think so-and-so may be hiding something. Pretty hard to do nowadays, by the way. We're a very, very digital society and employers pretty much automatically deposit your money. So once we find out where the money goes in, we can trace it from there. But so they have all of that information. They do the spreadsheet. They help them budget for afterwards. This is something you don't get in a litigation system. They don't care if you walk out of there broke. That's just your destiny in life, at the end of it. That's just the way it is. They're just there to divide it up.
Yeah.
They're not worried about your success later on. In the litigation system, people come to me and they're like, okay, so what can I do to protect my interest? It's too late. Everything's already happened. All your facts have already happened at that point. So here at this point, all we're going to do is start figuring out how we're going to divide it up. And that's what they don't understand is y'all have already set your facts. When we get into collaborative, though, the facts we're looking for haven't happened yet. They're all coming forward. So we're looking for how can somebody be more active in this or accommodate maybe an unusual career or, the kids something to provide the kids more stability or things like that. So we're really looking at a different aspect of it, which is why you have to be trained. So
That makes sense. What do you think is the most expensive emotion in divorce?
fear, absolutely fear. People who are afraid say no, period. You got to get them to where they're not afraid. And, I don't mean afraid of the other person, although that might be what they're afraid of. It could be just fear of the future, of how this is going to look afterwards.
Gotcha.
But that's the one that drives the most problems. And, people want to say anger, but usually the anger is the hurt. So it usually still goes more towards that fear. So
One other fun question, then we'll probably start moving towards wrapping up. Have you ever had a couple come in or a client and then in the middle of the divorce they reconcile? And if and when that happens, does it last or is it usually a flash in the pan?
yeah, it usually doesn't last, but yes, we have had numerous ones that reconcile. Interesting fact, it's going to be more often that a man will back out of filing a divorce. He'll file it and then he will be the one who dismisses it to try again. For women, we generally see that they wait years and years and years to file, and by that point, they are done.
Yeah.
It is really hard to talk a woman who files for divorce out of it.
That's interesting. I've heard similar statements like that in the past, but that's again, that's fascinating to hear.
It's just very, very rare. And I will tell, whenever I have a male client and they're like, well, maybe we can still try counseling, maybe we can still try all this. And I'll tell them, you know what, it never hurts to ask. But don't think it's going to happen for sure, because it's very, very hard. I've just had very few women come in and say, last weekend was the straw that broke the camel's back and I need to file. They're like, I've been wanting to do this, needing to do this for years. So it's just a different way of looking at it and making decisions. Gotcha. They take longer to make decisions, I think.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Well, Robin, here in a minute, I'm going to ask you my three closing questions. I'll give them to you right now so you can percolate on them, and then we'll jump back over and take a look at your site. Question number one, again, is if I gave you a magic wand and you could change one thing about your practice, what would you change? It could be anything at all. What would you change about your practice? Number two, you can go back in time, meet young Robin, give her some life advice, maybe fresh out of law school. What advice would you give to yourself and why, other than the obvious, which is, again, buy a lot of Bitcoin and hold it. And then number three is if I gave you my magical, this is a Bic 7mm number 2 pencil. There's only this much lead in it. It's almost done. So there's not a lot of lead in it, but there's just enough, and it's magical lead. Well, graphite. And you can change one law that's on the books, edit a law or add a new law, and then it'll be done. It'll be spent. So you can't do a lot with it, but you can do something very surgical. So think about that for a minute. And what law, big or little, local, national, in your wheelhouse or not, what law would you change and why? While you're percolating on that, we're going to jump over and take a look again at your website. Again, I am talking with Robin Zegen. She is the lovely face behind the law firm that also bears her name, the Zegen Law Firm PLLC. She is down in Dallas. She's got a very easy to remember website, the DallasDivorceAttorney.com. And as always, we will have a link down below to her website. You can also give her a phone call or come over here and click consultation and set up a call. If somebody has a question, is it like a free consultation, or is there a scheduling fee, or how does that work out for the average person if they wanted to contact you?
Yeah, so I do a 30-minute phone consult. Or I do an hour consult. So I offer that less expensive consult for people who maybe just have a few questions and may or may not be hiring an attorney. And then the hour for people who have a lot more questions and maybe need to know a lot more to decide what they want to do and what their options are.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And again, you're getting someone who clearly knows what she's talking about, so it's definitely worth your time. So again, that is the DallasDivorceAttorney.com. And as always, we will have links to Robin's site down below. Our final sponsor for today is Rank with News. When somebody Googles your name, your business, your company, your firm, what do they actually see? Is it just your website, or do they see real credibility, trust, and authority? Because the businesses getting chosen today aren't just visible, they're validated. And that's where Rank with News comes in. Rank with News helps feature you, your business, your firm in major media outlets like Business Insider, Yahoo News, AP News, Reuters, and more. So when prospects look you up, they don't just find you, they trust you. This isn't about running more ads, it's about owning your reputation at the exact moment when it matters when someone is looking you up. Visit rankwithnews.com or rankwith.news to learn more and see how it works, as well as book a free consultation. That's rankwith.news. Alrighty. So, Robin, magical question time. Number one, I give you my magic wand. With this wand, you can change anything you want about your practice. Big thing, little thing, whatever it happens to be. What's one thing you would love to change about your practice?
I would love for all cases to be handled in a collaborative system. You know, absent cases that have just extreme violence and things like that, which clearly just can't be done amicably in a room. But absent those cases, I think all the others can be. I've said for years, you have two good attorneys, we should be able to figure it out. We don't need to go and present it to a judge. We know generally how this works. But then the collaborative cases came along and it just does it one better. I mean, we have an issue, who's going to have the house, and we throw every option on the table, no matter how silly it is. Everybody in the room does. The financial professional, the mental health professional, everybody throws out every different option. We could sell it, we could rent it out, we could, you start looking at all the different options you can do. Then we go back to what the clients said their goals were at the very beginning, and we see which of these meet their goals. And we talk about that. And when we do that and they answer the first couple of things, everything just starts falling in line. It's not unusual for us to have one meeting and it kind of rocks along a little bit, and until we get something decided. And then we come back for the next meeting and they're like, you know what, we got together and we decided a whole bunch of stuff. And it's just great to see how they can work together. I think they come out of it better co-parents, because they haven't gotten on the witness stand and said every ugly thing they could say about each other. They haven't torn up their extended friends and family by pitting them all against each other. They haven't put their kids through the ringer. They've worked together like they should as parents. And I think it works well. And I just think, again, families don't belong in courtrooms. So I would love to see it transition more to collaborative. And I just think that they ought to take divorce cases out of the courtrooms.
Gotcha. No, it makes perfect sense. I'd like to see things move in that direction too. I think it sounds like just the better path forward for 90% of people, probably. You get a better outcome. You're probably happier, better client satisfaction, and even like being able to partner with that person still for raising kids or whatever needs to happen. It seems like that's probably the better way to go. So that's awesome.
It is. You don't have to be best friends, but there's got to be some common care for those kids, and I just think that it can be worked out. I mean, even parents who stay married have disagreements, right? I mean, we give these people a path on how to solve those. We don't do anything for those that stay married. They have to figure it out themselves, right?
Do you do collaborative marriages?
Yeah, I know.
There's the new, that's the new thing that's coming up. I'm telling you right now, you jump on that trend. I want 5%, but there's the idea. It's $1 million.
Yeah, no, it's a good system for solving. It's a good problem solving system.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so question number 2, we go back in time without breaking the space-time continuum, and you meet young Robin, maybe fresh out of law school. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I think that I would have probably transitioned over into family law faster. I really do think that that's where that's where my talents lie. I think I'm very, very good at understanding what drives somebody to do something. And so I'm pretty good at figuring out how to get that on track for getting them to want what needs to be their outcome. So, I think I'm very good at that, the managing the client aspect of it and helping them understand why things happen to them in the legal system. Because I think when they understand that, they can understand why I'm telling them I think they should do something. So I think that helps quite a bit. And I just think I've learned that probably more from raising kids than I have anything, is that when you tell people why, they tend to be more on board. If you understand the why behind it,
Yeah.
it tends to help and it sticks with them better. And so I think, I learned that from raising kids, but it really works well when you're trying to take somebody who doesn't live in the legal world and help them understand how this legal world is going to impact them as they get through it. And I think when they understand the why a judge does something, it helps them understand why what they're asking for is or isn't going to happen.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Okay, so question number 3, final question. I gave you a magical pencil, and with this magical pencil, you can change a law. It could be any law. You can get rid of parking tickets. You can get rid of income tax. You can change a law about collaborative divorce in Dallas or in all Texas or all the country. What law would you change?
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that it would be important to, in the collaborative setting, to have all attorneys have to be trained in collaborative, and I do think that more of them knowing that system would help them understand it, would help them agree to the collaborative process more often, and even when they didn't, they would use that system for trying to solve the problems throughout. And I think that really works well. Another one I would like to see, and I think is more likely to happen sooner than later, because I think the collaborative thing will be years and years and years down the road, but I do think it's going that way. Our system is way backlogged, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse every single year. And right now, a judge would need to try 9 cases a day in Dallas County just to stay even on their caseload.
Wow.
So, you can imagine it's an overwhelming job. But I do think that's coming. The one I think is coming sooner, and I think it's time for it to come, is starting point being 50-50 custody. I think it's time that we start there. That doesn't mean it's right for every family. It just means it's a starting point. And from there, we're going to look at this family and, what do they like? How do they treat their kids? What do they do with them, and so forth. But I do think it's the right starting point, because we have, in most cases anymore, 2 working parents. They're juggling the kids. Somebody's taking the kids to school on the way to work. Somebody's picking them up on the way home. They're juggling. One's taking one to soccer. The other one's taking one to ballet. And I mean, it's the way it has to be nowadays. And I think it's wrong to take that away from children when they are used to having both of their parents, and to say, nope, we're just going to see this one every other weekend. I think it's wrong.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And that does seem like the fair thing. So, well, Robin, it's been wonderful getting to talk with you today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with my listeners. Are there any parting words of wisdom or any final thoughts you want to leave people with before we close out?
I stress that everybody needs to look at whether they need a prenup. They need to look at whether they like the way the laws apply to them. And if they don't like it, they need to write their own for them. So.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense.
And this has been postnups. You can do it after you've been married. So it's not something you can just do right before you get married. You can do it afterwards as well.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, thank you very much. This has been, as always, The Attorney Post. I am your host, Justin West. I've been chatting with Robin Zegen, who, again, runs the law firm that bears her name. That is the Dallas divorce attorney, Zegen Law Firm PLLC down in Dallas. As always, though we do talk about a lot of legal issues on this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matters that you need help with. However, if you live in the Dallas area, obviously I think Robin would be a wonderful resource for you. So I can confidently suggest that you visit thedallasdivorceattorney.com and fill out her form and get a consultation. And at the end of the day, that's the most important part is knowing where you stand legally. Because again, as I always say, the tagline of the show is if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. As far as the podcast goes, this is, again, Justin West signing off. If you're watching this on YouTube, we always appreciate a like, subscribe, a share, a comment, whatever it happens to be. If you're on any of the podcast repositories out there, we're on Apple, Stitcher, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. Please feel free to rate us on those. But the most important thing is to help us grow this channel by sharing this information with someone that would benefit from it. If you know someone going through a divorce or looking at a divorce, obviously we hope that they could reconcile things, but if they can't, sharing this podcast with them might be helpful to them. And again, if they don't know their rights, they don't have any. Until next time, thank you guys for listening and stay safe. Bye-bye.